Hello and welcome to Across Africa, France Van Cat's weekly roundup from around the continent. Coming up in this edition, 9 people are killed in Nigeria in clashes between police and the Shia religious movement. Its members say they're being victimised, but authorities claim they started the violence. Coming to terms with the past, public hearings get underway in Tunisia over allegations of torture and abuse in the Ben Ali era. We'll be heading to Kenya and finding out why so-called lifestyle teas are blossoming in the country's eastern highlands. We start in Nigeria, where 9 people were killed this week in clashes between police and members of a Shia religious group. The Islamic movement in Nigeria claims the violence was unprovoked and started when security services opened fire on a procession in the city of Kano. It's not the first incident of its kind involving the IMN, which has been banned in Kaduna state. But its members say they're determined to gather to worship whatever. This from our correspondents Moise Gomez and Rosie Collier.
This was a community health and religious centre in the town of Zaria, the birthplace of the Islamic movement of Nigeria. It was bulldozed by the authorities last December following a clash with the military in which over 300 IMM members were killed. The movement has since been banned from congregating without permission from police. But members are undeterred and say they will continue to gather to mark religious occasions.
This restriction has strengthened my faith and my commitment to the movement. Most of what we do here is linked to religion. We pray, we fast, and so on.
The authorities argue that the movement, which has around 3 million followers, is unregistered and so cannot congregate. Past religious processions by the movement have blocked major highways for hours, sparking deadly clashes with angry members of the public. The police say they are ready to enforce the ban.
Since the group has been banned by the state government, I think they should not come out on any procession. They should stay away from going against the laws of the land, because the security forces are not going to just fold arms and look at people breaking the law without taking any action.
The continued detention without charge of the movement's leader, along with his wife, is likely to provoke huge numbers of faithfuls to join the al-Abidine procession. The movement is calling on its members to remain peaceful and is fighting the ban and violence by the state against the group's leader and his family in the law courts.
So within a period of 2 years, the state murdered 6 of his children. And I think that is not the way a Nigerian citizen should be dealt with. Now, if a Nigerian citizen has violated the law in terms of blocking an access route, the person must be dealt with in accordance with due process.
The bodies of over 300 members of the movement were buried in a mass grave by soldiers that is yet to be excavated. Their relatives pray to one day bury them according to Shia tradition.
Meanwhile, the COP22 climate summit came to the Moroccan city of Marrakesh this week, with battling the effects of global warming in Africa centre stage. 36 of the 50 worst-hit nations are on the continent. This get-together offering a chance to showcase new innovations. This report from Zimbabwe on an initiative to produce maize that can thrive in rising temperatures.
Zimbabwean scientist Cosmos Magaragosho is breeding a new heat-tolerant variety of maize. In spite of high temperatures and low rainfall, the result of climate change and the El Niño phenomenon, this hybrid maize has managed to survive. The seeds are produced by cross-pollinating 2 lines, resulting in higher and later yields.
Basically, it means transferring genes from one plant to another type so that you create a new type that is the characteristics that you want.
Once referred to as the breadbasket of Africa, Zimbabwe used to export maize. Now it imports about 2 million metric tons a year to feed itself. Earlier this year, Zimbabwe declared a state of disaster with 2.5 million people in urgent need of food aid. But farmers testing this hybrid maize managed to get by.
Compared to other seeds, these seeds survived the heat and dry conditions that we experienced, and this resulted in a better harvest. I should have enough to last until February next year.
Efforts to roll out the hybrid maize are being slowed down by government testing and approval procedures. Experts believe more should be done to speed up the process to prepare for even higher temperatures in the future.
The recent research says that crops aren't keeping up with the pace of climate change, and this is simply because as the environment warms, a crop will mature earlier than under the lower temperatures. When a crop matures earlier, it gives you less yield.
Drought is high on the agenda at the UN COP22 climate talks in Morocco. But while world leaders discuss how to cap global warming, farmers in southern Africa need to find ways to adapt to climate change in order to survive.
It's been nearly 6 years now since protests in Tunisia ended in the ouster of authoritarian President Zine al-Abidine Ben Ali. Now the cases of those who say they were mistreated under decades of dictatorship are finally being heard. An important moment in the national healing process. This from our correspondent Sandro Luchens.
This autumn, Najwa Rezgi began her 4th year as a middle school teacher. A peaceful and orderly life in the classrooms of Wadi Lil. But things were very different under the old regime, when the left-wing activist was imprisoned and forbidden from working in schools.
I don't see myself as a victim. I see myself as someone who can make use of my rights. We were not the only ones in prison. All the Tunisian people were in a giant prison. There will only be real change if the current process succeeds.
Najwa is one of 65,000 Tunisians who filed a case with the Truth and Dignity Commission. It handles the most serious allegations of government abuse committed between 1955 and 2013. The first step is to contact a call centre. Claimants' cases are then filed and passed on to hearing units where their testimony is recorded. Over the past 2 years, 11,000 stories, including those of torture, corruption and maltreatment, have already been told behind closed doors.
A hearing unit is made up of 2 or 3 people, a legal expert, a psychologist and a sociologist. They record the testimony and ask 2,000 questions on the violations and on the social and health conditions. A session can last up to 5 hours, depending on the case.
The files are then transferred to the specialized investigation units, where judges and lawyers follow up inquiries.
Our principle is to reveal the truth. When offenders talk to us, they don't only show what they've done, but also reveal how the machine worked, and that is very important.
Most plaintiffs merely ask for the truth to be told. The public hearings are the first major step in sharing victims' memories. In time, the Commission's huge archives may serve as a record of a turbulent period in the country's history. An alternative to the propaganda of former dictatorships.
We get more now from Sandro on Tunisia's post-revolution problems. The country currently finding itself in the grip of a rubbish crisis. That's throwing the focus onto the so-called berbeshas, the unofficial bin men who play a huge part in getting at least some of what's thrown out onto the streets into recycling centres.
Searching through garbage while the city of Tunis is fast asleep. Selim uses his bare hands to carefully sift through trash. He earns about 150 euros a month from selling on what he finds and has been doing his rounds for 20 years. Those who make their living this way are called berbesha.
I salvage plastic, cartons, bottles, almost anything you can find in the trash. That's my life. It's how I got married. It's how I'll raise my children. At night, there are at least 50 of us in this sector alone.
There are an estimated 8,000 berbeshas, all undeclared workers of the informal economy. They provide 60% of Tunisia's recycling. In the morning, they sell their night's harvest to collectors by the kilo. Arsène used to be a berbesha himself until he saved up enough money to run his own waste collection centre. He decided to make his career in garbage.
Okay, I owe you 12.5 dinars.
Each haul will be sorted and then resold to recycling factories, who will pay cash and without receipt.
We've created jobs thanks to garbage, and we play an important role in cleaning the country. Even the official garbage men tell us we're doing them a huge favour.
Tunisia's berbeshas are keen to formalise their industry. In 2014, an organisation was launched by former berbeshas who have since been campaigning for legal status, health insurance and access to financing.
We try to show the state that in Tunisia lots of people can make a living out of garbage. The state makes promises, but in the end, nothing happens.
Tunisia's problems with waste management has just got worse since the 2011 revolution. 60% of the rubbish goes to dumps and only 5% is recycled. Much of the rest is left on the streets.
Finally to Kenya, where purple tea is blossoming in the country's eastern highlands. It's a variation on the traditional black tea crop and comes as more and more farmers turn to specialty leaves in the hope that they can better withstand price fluctuations caused by oversupply.
Kenya is the world's leading exporter of black tea. Oversupply and variable weather conditions lead to global price fluctuations. So the authorities now encourage production of niche varieties such as purple tea. It was developed by Kenyan researchers 5 years ago. Purple tea can fetch 10 times more per kilo than black tea. The Jeru family started planting some in 2012.
It ended up being a good diversification. The tea itself had good health benefits, and it has now caught up in the market. And buyers are, the demand is now, almost outstripping the supply.
Unlike black tea, purple tea is not fermented in processing, and it contains some substances which some experts say have health benefits. This supermarket in Nairobi started selling purple tea a year ago. It now represents nearly 4% of its total tea sales.
I would recommend for them to plant more purple tea, and they will, of course, obviously profit from it because there's so many people who love tea in Kenya. And we have so many customers in Kenya who would love to try new things.
Kenya's industry regulator says it wants the share of specialty teas to rise to 10% within the next 5 years.
And that's it for this edition of Across Africa. Thanks for watching and do stay with us here on France 24.